Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kaviviriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatatam Bhuvigunantiye Bhurida Janaha. So we were discussing the conversation that Ram was having with Sri Ramakrishna. So the topic today that we are discussing from the gospel is there any person who can be called as free from all debts? Sri Ramakrishna, of course, had spoken of the Rina or the 5 debts that every human being has. Debt towards his parents, debt towards his guru, debt towards the nature around from whom he is getting all his all the things. So there are these 5 types of debts which we have to uh, address every human being. But there are a certain class of people who, according to the scriptures, they don't have any debt because they have renounced the world. Now, sannyasins or monks who renounce the world, they are free from debt because they have chosen not to have a family. Naturally, there is no duty for such people. So, who are such people? Those who are sannyasins in spirit, or at least even formally. And what are the duties? If at all he has also some kind of debts, what are those? So, that is the topic of discussion in the gospel today. And Sri Ramakrishna M has given the subtitle for this particular portion of the chapter: Who is free from all debts? Runa, it is known as Rina. And Sannyasin and his duties, that is the topic. But then he says, after explaining, you remember in the previous class we spoke about the different duties of a householder. What duties he has to perform when he is living in the world. He has duty towards his family, he has duty towards the ancestors, he has duty towards nature, his duty towards the society around him. There are many types of duties which are described in our Dharma Shastras. But then Sri Ramakrishna continues, this is also specifically true that if a person, now you see how he is defining monkhood or a person who is not a householder. He says, if a person feels intoxicated with God's love, if God's love is the only motive in his life, then there is no father, no mother, and no wife for him. The famous hymn of Shankaracharya, and which says that I don't have any father, I don't have a mother, it is used in that sense. He is saying, Kaupinavanta Khalu Bhagyavanta. There is a Kaupina Stotra which Shankaracharya has composed. He says, one who renounces the world, there is no social obligation for him. So, Sri Ramakrishna, echoing those ideas, he says, there is no father, no mother, no wife for him. He may have so much love for the Lord that sometimes such a person may appear to be mad. So it's not that only monks can have this. People like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose life is being described now, Sri Ramakrishna will give that example. He was so much intoxicated. Even Bhagwan Buddha, when he left left the world and decided to become a monk, formally, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also did, they were married. Not only that, Chaitanya, of course, Buddha, of course, had a son also. But that can be excused provided his sole purpose for which he is living is God's love, to somehow realize God. In such a case, he doesn't have any duty. And Sri Ramakrishna says, he has so much of attraction towards the divine, towards the Lord. And such a person, he appears to be a bit eccentric. That is what happened when Sri Ramakrishna, we saw how Holy Mother had to face the criticism of all the village women who thought her husband was mad. Instead of looking after the family, instead of earning money, Sri Ramakrishna was so mad after God that he uh, did not appear to perform his household duties. And that is, according to Sri Ramakrishna and according to our scriptures, that can be forgiven because they don't have duties if they are so obsessed with the love of God. So he says he has so much love for the Lord that he may appear to be mad, and such a person has no duties. So Sri Ramakrishna is now giving the example of certain prophets, certain people who were so possessed by this divine love that they had apparently they were free from duties. He said he may have so much of love for the Lord that he doesn't care whether the world appreciates him or not. He is just possessed by that, and he is freed from all the debts. He doesn't have any kind of obligation. Now Sri Ramakrishna says, what is intoxication with love for God? What is it like? So he's trying to explain what it means to love God. In that state, one forgets the world. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is saying that this is literally true. Such prophets, such people who are like Tulsidas, in later life, he became intoxicated with love for God. In fact, he was so infatuated with his own wife that he was a very worldly person before he suddenly, one incident changed his whole life. And his wife was so disgusted with him. She said, if you have the same love for the Lord, which you have for me, you would have realized him. So that was like a turning point in his life. He simply left everything, and then he became the famous Tulsidas. He wrote so much of, in fact, the Tulsi Ramayana is full of devotion. The Tulsi Ramayana that he composed for the common people is full of devotion to the Lord. Every character in that, the original Valmiki Ramayana, of course, all the characters that are there, he has shown that Lakshmana, Bharata, even Sita, and everybody who is in that, who has a character in this Ramayana, they are all filled with love for for Rama, Sri Ramachandra. So that kind of love, so he's interpreted the whole Ramayana, Valmiki's Ramayana, which is now known as Tulsi Ramayana. Everyone he shows has different, they were in different stages, and each one had a special relationship. Maybe some of them considered Rama to be their elder brother, like Bharata, or as a servant. Bharata simply considered Rama to be the real king, and he was ruling the kingdom on his behalf. So all the different relationship with the Lord, if they are developed, such a person seems to be totally above the worldly desires and the worldly pursuits. So he says, one even forgets the body. They're so deeply in love with the ideal whom they worship. And he gives the example of Chaitanya Deva. Sri Chaitanya had this state. So he was, when he saw, they say, when he saw the sea, the same thing happened with the gopis. Because Sri Krishna's color was dark and the waters of Yamuna were dark. So when they saw anything dark, that reminded them of Sri Krishna's color. And sometimes they would just jump into the river. With great difficulty, they had to be saved. So he was so much intoxicated that when he went on the beach, in Puri, when he went near the sea in Puri, if those who have visited, they know how rough that sea is. It is so difficult. If you just jump into the sea, it's very difficult to save. So Chaitanya Dev, when he was in that God intoxicated state, he was unaware that it is the sea. Seeing the blue color, the dark color of the sea, is to just advance towards that. Of course, in that state of deep state of mind. So what they did was, Sri Ramakrishna is saying, he would simply jump. And sometimes he would fall hard on the ground again and again, like Sri Ramakrishna also did when he was doing his sadhana. He lost all hunger, sleep. Hridaya had to force him to eat. So similarly, we see in Chaitanya's life also, he was not conscious of his body, whether he had taken food or not. That is the highest form of love, which is known as prema. Others are preparatory. The other bhakti is preparatory in most of the sadhakas. They are trying to get that bhakti. But once you are deeply uh, full of that higher devotion, which is known as prema, you will see that uh, you just lose consciousness of that one has a body. That is the last stage. Of course, that happens only when one is in a very high state of mind. So then Sri Ramakrishna, the topic changes, but Sri Ramakrishna is continuing his conversation with Pran Krishna, M, and other devotees who were there. So the new topic is Elder Gopal, Budo Gopal, who was older than Sri Ramakrishna and who was also known as Advaitananda. He was Sri Ramakrishna's disciple. In fact, he was also married and he was a widower. He had lost his wife and he was older than Sri Ramakrishna, though he was his disciple. So that old Gopal or Budo Gopal used to be known as Budo. In Bengali, Budo means old. So Elder Gopal was preparing to go on a pilgrimage and Sri Ramakrishna is present there. So he is asking him, tell me why you want to go on a pilgrimage. And then Adhar Sen, he was one of a very close devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. He was a deputy magistrate. In those days, it was a very high post in the British government. So the Adhar Sen's invitation to Sri Ramakrishna, in fact, Sri Ramakrishna loved him deeply and he had a very untimely death. Adhar Sen was a deputy magistrate and in those days they used to ride horses. But somehow Sri Ramakrishna felt and warned him. He said, see, you should not be... He was very fond of horses. He could have easily gone in a carriage, but he wanted to ride a horse. So once Sri Ramakrishna saw something and he said, please don't try to avoid riding a horse. And unfortunately, when Sri Ramakrishna was alive, he fell down. He died when he fell down from a horse. So anyway, this Adhar Sen's house is perhaps the only house after Balram Bose's house, Balram Mandir, that Sri Ramakrishna has visited at least 8 to 10 times. We do not know about other houses, but in that Bagh Bazaar area of Calcutta, Sri Ramakrishna visited Balram's Mandir or Balram's house many times. That is well known. But others' house also he visited, Adhar Sen. And Sri Ramakrishna, Ram's vanity. So these are the topics and Sri Ramakrishna meditates. That's the headline, the subheading that M has given. And Thakur suddenly says, he's still continuing the conversation, he's talking about the divine love. He says, Chaitanya. He is now speaking to the devotees who were present there. M was, of course, a very deeply devoted to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was a Vaishnava. And though he was a Brahmo, most of these people were influenced by Brahmo Samaj, including Swamiji, Rakhal and all others. So now he is trying to explain to this whole group who was Chaitanya. He says, was Chaitanya? He was the indivisible Chaitanya. The Chaitanya has two meanings. That is the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But there is another meaning. Chaitanya also means consciousness. The consciousness which is the substratum of all of us. All of us, our consciousness is everywhere. That is Prajnanam Brahma. That is the Mahavakya of the Upanishads. Consciousness is the only thing that doesn't change. Everything else other than Brahman comes under the purview of Prakriti or Shakti. So you see, whatever change you see is in Prakriti, not in the Purusha, which is full of consciousness. So Vaishnava Charan, now he is a great scholar, Vaishnava scholar. Sri Ramakrishna is quoting him. Vaishnava Charan used to say that Gauranga, that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? That is the question. So he says Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Gauranga is just a bubble of the same indivisible consciousness. So as we saw yesterday in our class, the Bhagavad Gita class, when we were reading the 10th chapter, the Vibhuti Yoga, the Vibhuti that we see around us is nothing but a partial manifestation of Brahman or that Chaitanya. But it has its own value. When we meditate, we can't meditate on Brahman. So we meditate on its the manifestation of that Brahman through Prakriti. So the Gauranga is like a big bubble or a big ocean, wave in the ocean of Sat Chit Ananda. That is the indivisible consciousness. Consciousness cannot be divided. But that whole ocean, the waves belong to the ocean. The small wavelets, the big waves, the bubbles and everything are part of the ocean. But ocean is not limited by these waves. The waves come and go. The form comes and goes. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna is explaining Gauranga is just like a huge bubble of the same indivisible consciousness. Akhanda Satchidananda. That's why they say Akhanda means that which cannot be made Khanda, that which cannot be divided. Whatever can be divided falls under the realm of Prakriti. Whereas Purusha is indivisible, pure consciousness is indivisible. Now Sri Ramakrishna is changing his topic. He is asking Elder Gopal, do you intend to go on a pilgrimage? The Elder Gopal or Buddha Gopal says, yes sir, I was planning to visit some places. Then Ram tells Elder Gopal that he says that one becomes a Kuti Chaka after becoming a Bahudaka. Bahudaka means there are two terms for a sadhaka. Bahudaka means, Udaka means water in Sanskrit. Bahudaka means one who drinks water from different places. Bahu Udaka, Bahudaka. So what is Bahudaka? Bahudaka means one who is always moving. He won't be drinking from the same source. He'll be drinking from one river now. Tomorrow he is going to the Yamuna. The other day he might go to some other river, some pond. So he is taking water from different places. That means he is a wandering person or a wandering monk. So there is a saying that those people who constantly, the sadhu visits many holy places and drinks water from different places is known as Bahudaka. Whereas one who has advanced, Ram is telling Elder Gopal that one becomes a Kuti Chaka. Kuti Chaka means one who is fixed and does not move out from one place. He is more concerned about doing sadhana, sitting in one place rather than moving around. He feels that is a distraction. So Ram is telling Elder Gopal that maybe now you want to visit some places, but one day you have to come and settle down at one place. As Sri Ramakrishna had done, he never moved out of Dakshineshwar, whereas many people used to visit. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna in earlier days, he visited Banaras and many other places. So he says those who don't have a desire to move around, those who settle down peacefully at one place on an asana, is asana in the sense one seat. That is how the sadhus say, oh, are you a Bahudaka or a Kuti Chaka? That means if you are young, if you can have the energy to travel, you travel. You will be known as Bahudaka. Whereas the Kuti Chaka is a person who is fixed to one particular Kuti or Kutiya. That is Kuti Chaka. He will never leave a place. He will be more involved or engaged in meditation, sitting in one place. He feels that it's a distraction to travel to different places. Each one has its own value, but here these are the two different names. Then Sri Ramakrishna gives a wonderful example. Now this example, parable or story which he used to tell has been interpreted in many ways. So what is the nature of a Bahudaka and when does one become a Kuti Chaka? Sri Ramakrishna is explaining through a beautiful example. So he says, a bird was sitting on the mast of a ship. So the bird was sitting on the mast of a ship. The bird did not know when the ship came out of the holy Ganges and entered the black waters of the ocean. In those days, when you could not see the ocean, we didn't have telescopes and all those things, binoculars and all. You could not see. From a distance, the sea appears to be very dark. So they used to call it black waters. In fact, there is a name in Bengali which is known as Kala Pani. Means one who goes very far in the ocean and he crosses. Some boats used to cross, some ships used to cross different oceans and go to the other continents. They were known as people who have left the ocean here and tried to cross the ocean. They are known as, they have crossed the Kala Pani. Kala Pani means water looks a bit dark. So he's saying some people, those days, the mouth of the Ganga, Dakshineshwar is very near the mouth of the Ganga. So boats used to leave from Dakshineshwar, and Sri Ramakrishna used to see those boats. They used to go for fishing or sometimes even carrying goods. They used to travel, they used to go into the ocean, and then people used to say that they have entered the black waters of the ocean, leaving the river. So once a bird was sitting on such a big ship, on the mast of the big ship, and it was taking rest. Perhaps it did not know when the ship came out of the holy Ganges and entered the ocean and went far in, deep inside the ocean. I mean, far away from the port or far away from the river. When it became aware of the ocean, it wanted to know where the land was. Now, when it woke up, he saw that bird saw that no land is. I was when the bird sat perched on that mast of the sails of the ship. It was very near the land, so it could go and come. But that was when the ship was steady. But once it left and it was sleeping, it was resting. It did not realize, the bird did not realize that the land is far off. So it was looking in different directions. Where is the land? I have just left now. I have to go back. It had to come back to the land. So flying to the north, he started flying. He said, let me go to the north. He saw there's no shore at all. It is just sea, sea and sea, because the ship had gone deep, far into the sea. Having rested, then it went for north and he did not see land, so it decided to come back. It was getting tired, the bird was tired. So it returned. Then it took some rest. Then he said, now let me try the other direction. So it flew south, but found that there was no shore on south. So after that it went to the west after some rest and east, because the ship had gone so far that the bird was tired. It could not it could not cross the ocean and reach the coast which the ship had left long ago. So after resting, after trying all this, it was so tired, and when it found there was no land or shore anywhere nearby, it perched peacefully on the mast. Then it said, okay, let me just rest here. I'm at least safe here. If I go on flying and if I get tired and fall down, then I'll die, because there's no land in sight. So it's better I perch here and just rest instead of struggling going this way, that way. The idea is that a person who in his initial stages of his sadhana, he has a tendency to move around, to visit places of pilgrimage. That's why he's known as Bahudaka. And Sri Ramakrishna is trying to explain that once you have found that the essence of spirituality is to do spiritual practices sitting in one place. Because those who are in the initial stages, they have the energy, they want to visit these places, and finally, like the tired bird, when it found that there is no rest anywhere, finally it settles down and said, let me be happy where I am. So Sri Ramakrishna is trying to point out that Kutichaka is normal to those people who have been Bahudakas and moving around here and there. Only when they understand the futility of going to different places for sadhana, then they will settle down in one place. That's the idea. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is telling Elder Gopal, Buddha Gopal, as long as one thinks, now this is something very important because Elder Gopal was planning to go on pilgrimage. In fact, you all know the first distribution of Gerua and the Rudraksha Mala of which Sri Ramakrishna did and distributed it to the young boys who later on became the direct disciples was actually Buddha Gopal's idea. He was a widower, as we all know. If you see his biography, his wife had died and he was full of sorrow. So he came to Sri Ramakrishna and was quite old also. So he had some money. So he decided to gift, go to different places of pilgrimage, and wherever he found sadhus, he wanted to give Gerua cloth and a mala. That's what normally people give to the monks. So he thought, let me go to the different places of pilgrimage. I'll find sadhus there and give. But Sri Ramakrishna said, where will you look for sadhus? Why can't you not see that there are sadhus here only? I mean, in those days, during that period, none of them had taken sannyas. They were just young boys. But Sri Ramakrishna knew that one day they will be given. So Sri Ramakrishna himself said, then Buddha Gopal agreed. When Sri Ramakrishna said, why don't you distribute it here? These are, where will you get better sadhus than? So Naren and all those were there. Not all the 16 disciples, there were few of them. I think there were 10 people there. So 10 pieces of Gerua cloth and 10 malas were distributed. So people in our order, we believe that that is when actually the direct disciples got sannyasa from Thakur himself. But that was not formal. It was just distribution of the Gerua cloth. But it was symbolic because later on when they took sannyas, perhaps they would have used the same cloth which Thakur had given them, which Buddha Gopal wanted to distribute in other parts of India on the basis of pilgrimage. So he is trying to tell him, as long as one thinks the Lord is somewhere there. I mean, why do we go on pilgrimage? We think the Lord is there. We think the Lord is in Tirupati. We think the Lord is in Vrindavan. That is in the initial stages. Yes, you have to go because in the initial stages, when you think, as long as one thinks that the Lord is there, then one is ignorant. So he knew Advaita Ananda or Buddha Gopal was not a person who was ignorant. All he needed was some guidance from his guru. So he is telling him, if you think the Lord is there and you run after that Lord there, then you are ignorant. But when you think the God is definitely here, here means within. That is where we are supposed to meditate. If you think the Lord is here, then that is jnana. So he's trying to convince Advaitananda that think carefully. You want to go somewhere else. That's why he perhaps told him, why don't you distribute it and settle down here and meditate when your guru is here, when you are in Dakshineshwar, your guru is still alive. Why are you going here and there searching for that God who is to be found within? That is what the guru tells. The Lord is always within. The kingdom of God, as Jesus said, is always within you. Kingdom of God cannot be outside. It has to be within you. You have to discover that Lord within. Then Sri Ramakrishna gives another very, very significant example. This was on 5th April 1884, much before he passed away in 2 years before he passed away. So he gives another example. First he gave the example of that bird. Now he gives the example of a person who wanted to smoke. Somebody wanted a smoke. He went to his neighbor's home to get a light. You know, normally if you don't have a matchstick or anything, you can't smoke. You need a light. So he went to his neighbor and asked him. It was very late at night. He said, I want to smoke. Can you please give me a light? It was quite late at night. So the neighbors were all asleep. He woke them up. When he had knocked for a long time, somebody came downstairs and opened the door. And seeing the caller, he said, He knew that the farmer knew, the person who opened the door knew that he is a chain smoker. He was so restless that he wanted to smoke immediately. Uh, he just opened the door, said, "What's the matter? Why are you knocking at the door at this unearthly hour of the night?" So the neighbor said, "You know, there's no issue as such, nothing more than this. I am addicted to smoking. You already know about that. So I have come for a light. Can you please help me? I can't, tolerate. I have to smoke now." So then, and that fellow replied, he wanted a light. The man who opened the door said, "Oh, you are a fool. You have taken the trouble to come here and knocked so long, but you have a lantern in your hand." Because in those days, if you had to go, there were no torches. You had to use a lantern. So this fellow, so absent-mindedly, was taking the lantern and he went to somebody else's house and knocked and said, uh, "You have a lantern. Why did you come and disturb me here at night? You could have." Then he said, "Oh, yes, yes, yes." And everybody started laughing. So through this humorous story, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, explain certain deep philosophical truths, that we have that light within us. We have that the Lord is always within us. All we have to do is to see Him there. But people still think the Lord, they try to search for the Lord in different places. It is just like taking a lantern and having a lantern in your own hand with you. You don't uh, use that lantern to smoke. You go to some other house. When you go on a pilgrimage to find the Lord there, when He is deep within your own heart. So He is already with you. Why do you have to go in search of light, in search of realization? The kingdom of God, as they say, is already within you, is not outside. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, whatever a man desires, it is already with him. Yet he wanders from place to place. You want God, God is with you. But because you don't see Him, because you are not pure enough, you cannot see Him in your own heart, because the heart is full of so many things that the light of the Lord is covered. We have to remove the impurities surrounding the heart, then the Lord shines, the consciousness or the Chaitanya shines in its own glory. You don't have to light it, it is already there, the lamp is already there. But you have to notice that and see it, not run here and there hoping to get light from other people. So, is Thakur now hinting? Now, M is writing a small footnote there. Is Thakur hinting that the Lord is present there? Or why then go on pilgrimage? That He is present here? Then why go on a pilgrimage? He is indirectly hinting. M is thinking that perhaps Sri Ramakrishna is giving a hint to his disciple that the Lord is here, you will get spirituality, everything you want here. His guru was here and he was trying to go somewhere else. So why should he go on a pilgrimage? That is what M thought. M thought that is why he is discouraging him. Because whatever he wants to achieve in life, he can achieve in the company of his master here. So Sri Ramakrishna was indirectly saying, what will you get there? If you can't find him here, then you will not find him anywhere else. So Ram still is Ram has understood what Sri Ramakrishna wants to say. He says, "Sir, I now understand why the Guru asked some disciples to visit the four dhamas." Four dhamas, the Chatur Dhama, they say. In the south, in the west, it is Dwarka in the west, Puri in the east, and then we have in the south, Puri, Dwarka, and these are the four places. And then we have Joshimat, or there is a place. There are different places which there are four mutts in the four directions. So they say four dham, Chatur dham. There is this Kedar dham, then there will be Dwarka here, and you have in the south, what is that? Sringeri. Sringeri is in the south, or the four monasteries or the four dhamas. They are Rameshwaram. If you take the temples, then it is Rameshwaram in the south. You have Kedar in the north. If the Vaishnavas, they will describe the four dhamas differently. They will identify the places associated with Krishna. Otherwise, you associate with Shiva. So anyway, these four dhamas means you have to go to the four corners of India. That's when the Guru in the initial stages, Ram thinks that Guru will first ask them to visit the four dhamas. When he goes from place to place and sees that what he sees here is what he sees there, then he returns to his Guru. All this is done so that the Guru disciple may have firm faith in the words of the Guru. So Ram is interpreting in a different way. He says perhaps Thakur wants that first let you go to these places of pilgrimage. And when you really feel like that bird tried everything, if you say don't go there, the bird will not be convinced. The bird has to fly. When it does not see anything, then it comes back and settles here. But before it tries in all the directions, one does not have that faith. So Ram thought that perhaps Ram is telling us that perhaps the Guru tells his disciple to visit these four dhamas so that there will come a stage in his life that they will try to see the same spirituality here. So when the conversation stops for a while, Sri Ramakrishna praises Ram. Then he says, oh, he's telling the devotees, oh, what good qualities Ram has. Now how he serves the devotees and looks after them. To Ram, Other told me that you were very hospitable to him. So Ram used to invite a lot of devotees, and when Sri Ramakrishna came, and they used to feed them also, because when you invite the devotees, you have to feed them. So he was very hospitable that way. Then Adar Sen, now we'll come to Adar now, who's another devotee, whose house is in Shobha Bazar, that's part of Calcutta. He is a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. The Chandi was sung at his house. So he used to organize the singing of Chandi, which are 700 verses almost. The different chapters of the Devi Mahatmya are also known as Chandi or Durga Saptashati. So Saptashati means 700. Saptashati. So it is also known as Durga Saptashati. That was being sung in Adar's house. And he wanted, normally when such recitals are held, they will invite some holy person. Thakur and a number of devotees were invited. They were present, but Adar had forgotten to invite Ram. Though Ram had invited many and used to invite all the devotees, somehow he missed out and he forgot to invite Ram. And Ram was a very proud person. He told some friends that he was very much displeased of this negligence. He was a bit full of ego. He said, see, he has invited everybody, he has not invited me. So Adar later on realized that, and he went to Ram's house to apologize. He felt that, oh, I made such a big mistake by not inviting Ram. Because then Ram says, oh, don't worry, Adar is not to be blamed. I've learned that it was Rakhal's mistake. Rakhal was given that responsibility. Rakhal was Swami Brahmananda. So he perhaps forgot. He was told by Sri Ramakrishna to approach Ram and invite him to Adar's place. Or Adar had himself told him, but somehow he forgot. And it was not Adar's mistake. But anyway, still he went to apologize. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, now Sri Ramakrishna is protecting his disciple. He says, no, you must not find fault with Rakhal. You can bring up mother's milk by pressing his throat. That means he is very young and immature. He was very young and he had a childlike nature. He never took anything seriously. So Sri Ramakrishna loved him as if he would love a small child, like his own child. And he knew that Rakhal whose nature was like that of a child. He could not take up any responsibility. So he says it's just as if he is still depending on his mother's milk. I mean, it's just a figurative way of telling that he is very immature. Don't worry, you can't blame him. Ram says, they say that the Chandi was sung in Adar's house. Sri Ramakrishna says, Adar didn't know about that. Just see, the other day, he accompanied me to Jadu Malik's house. When we were leaving, I asked him why he had not offered pranami to the deity, to Mother Simhavahini there. He replied, sir, I didn't know that I was supposed to offer pranami. Most of these Jadu Malik and many of the other people in those days in Calcutta, they were influenced by the Brahmo ideals. The Brahmos never believed in doing pranams or giving pranami and all those things. They never, they tried to discourage. They said Hinduism, these things are very superstitious. That was their idea. So naturally, perhaps Jadu Malik was influenced by that. Then uh, Sri Ramakrishna says he didn't know the tradition. That is why he didn't offer. Normally, in the Hindu tradition, whenever you go to a holy place, you offer something. Even if it is something very insignificant, you have to offer something. So Sri Ramakrishna said, and even if one is not invited, see, he's complaining, he's telling Ram, you should not have done like that. Even if you are not invited, what is wrong going to the place where Hari's name is being sung? So that is Sri Ramakrishna's attitude, that if you really want holy company, if you really wanted to come, you could have gone. Why did you let your ego to prevent you from going there? Any place where Hari's name is sung, you knew Sri Ramakrishna is coming there, there would be singing, there would be so much of spiritual joy. Why did you deprive yourself of that? He says one should go even uninvited when the name of Hari is being chanted. There is no need for any invitation. So Sri Ramakrishna is to train his disciples. In fact, many times he also did. Whenever he heard, once a very unpleasant incident happened, but he was so much like a child. There was a devotee who had arranged a big some function and there was a lot of feeding. So Sri Ramakrishna told Rakhal, and Swamiji was also there, Naren, let us go. He always liked to go where there was the singing going on. So he thought these people were very shy to go. He said, we are not invited. Why should we go? They may insult us. And in fact, that happened. But Sri Ramakrishna was not bothered. He went there with all these young disciples, and they were very much concerned that we are going uninvited. Maybe the owners or the people where we are going, though there was a big festival there, but perhaps they had not invited. But Sri Ramakrishna was keen to go and he went there. And when he went there, they were so much, they were neglected, they were not even given a proper place to take prasad. They were literally near the door, there was some place where they had to hurry. And Sri Ramakrishna still did not blame the people. And Rakhal and Naren were terribly angry. Actually, somebody had paid the carriage fare. Sri Ramakrishna could not go back. He was so weak that he could not. The young children, the young disciples could easily go walk back, but he could not do it. So somebody had hired a carriage, and Sri Ramakrishna, like a child, just went there. And then, normally, when you invite, when it's time to go, the people, the hosts will pay the fare. They will call the carriage and then they'll pay the fare and send you. Now the function was not over and they were being insulted, they were being neglected, not insulted, that they were feeling very bad. They said, let us leave this place. So Sri Ramakrishna was so practical. First he said, no, if we leave without taking prasad, then it will be very bad for these people, the hosts. Because when holy men come, they should be fed something. And if we don't take, that is why when holy men go, there is a tradition that the holy man will ask the place where he goes, at least give me a little water, even if he is not offered anything, because it will do a lot of harm to that people. So Sri Ramakrishna said, do you know, maybe it is because of some negligence, but we should not harm him, because if we go without taking prasad, it will harm that person. Then they reluctantly agreed, though they were very angry that they were ill-treating not themselves, but Sri Ramakrishna also. And then finally, when Rakhal or somebody was very angry, he said, no, let us go. Even now they are not bothering about us. Let us go. Then Sri Ramakrishna jokingly told him, he said, where will you get the hire? Because they were all young people. They didn't have a single penny with them. He said, it is very easy to get angry and get upset. Don't be inflated with ego. You all know that somebody had paid our carriage fare. That's why we came here. Now, who will take us back? Let us wait, even if. So, Thakur, though it was a very practical advice. So he said, where will you get the fare to go back. That means he was so full of a genuine egolessness was there. He said ego comes in the way. If the Harinam is going on, he's telling Ram, other might not have invited you. But there was some good chanting going on, so much of singing was going on. Sri Ramakrishna also was supposed to visit. So he said, why didn't you just come? Why did you let your ego uh, obstruct you from going? He said, even if one is not invited, what is wrong to go to a place where Hari's Nam is sing? So Sri Ramakrishna is trying to explain this to his disciples. Now we come to we have just 5 minutes now. Maybe we will start the topic in our next class. We started a bit late. If there are some questions, you can just type quickly. I'll just answer a few questions, because now we'll start a new chapter. Ramakrishna is with the devotees at Dakshineshwar itself and attends a performance of Chaitanya at Calcutta. So it took place on 21st September. This was in April, but 1884, where a large number of devotees had gathered in Sri Ramakrishna's room in Dakshineshwar. They were Mahendra Mukherjee, Chunilal, M and all. Chunilal had just returned from Vrindavan, and Rakhal had gone there with Balram and other people. Nitya Gopal was also there. They were talking about Vrindavan and what Chunilal experienced. Chunilal Basu, he was a very humble and simple devotee. Sri Ramakrishna always used to take lot of care. He loved this disciple so much that he knew Chunilal was a man of very less means. He did not have the carriage hire to go back. So he used to walk miles to go back to his home. Whenever he came to Dakshineshwar, he didn't even have money to pay the boat. Boat was very difficult in those days. They had to go by carriage. So Sri Ramakrishna though he was in Samadhi and he was in a deep spiritual state, he was so practical that he would not forget to tell the rich devotees to take Chunilal with them. He said, are you going to Calcutta? Why can't you drop him? So Sri Ramakrishna was so much concerned, and he allowed this disciple of his that he used to. So he knew that Chunilal was a man of very meager means. He was not very rich. So he could not afford so he used to look after the secular needs of his disciples also. So now anyway, there is a question. Swamiji, you asked about deep devotion and for God giving examples of Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu, Tulsidas, etc. Can such deep love, deep devotion be developed by any practice, or does it come automatically from within? Yes, everything has two sides. There is a thing which is known as self-effort. So they say self-effort and grace. You may say if God's grace is there, then you will have that kind of deep love. Or you may also ask, if I do sadhana, if I practice bhakti continuously, will I develop that kind of prema, that higher devotion? Both yes and no, because you can't say it is just grace. First of all, it requires God's grace to even have that desire for bhakti. Secondly, if one has bhakti, one has to practice that. So things won't just happen. So you may say it's 50% self-effort, 50%. Not exactly, I'm not trying to quantize it, but what I'm saying is, when you do sadhana, when you do sadhana with the hope that one day you will receive the grace of the Lord. You may not receive it immediately. You may not receive it after a few years. But you have to keep trying. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say that the grace of the Lord, somebody asked him, why does not God, the divine grace, flow upon everybody? If he wants, he can make everybody spiritual. Why can't he do it? He says the God's grace is always flowing. We think it is not flowing, it's always flowing. The wind is always flowing. But in a boat, he gave an example. One has to raise the mast and open the sails so that they get the benefit of the wind. So the raising the mast or opening the sails is the self-effort, the sadhana, that the upasana that we do. If we do it, then we can get advantage, or when we can get the benefit of the wind that is flowing, the grace of Lord which is flowing. It is always flowing. It is only we who have put down the mast. So the boat is not moving. The boat, if it has to move, especially when those boats which move with the help of a sail, in those days it was, people had to wait for wind, and when the wind blows, they had to raise their sails so that the ship moved forward. That is the example Sri Ramakrishna is uh, giving. So your answer to your question is, how can we develop? Yes, we can develop by going about doing our sadhana as much as possible, and hoping that there is, of course, the question of our past karma and many things, but even that comes under the realm of grace, God's grace. So it's God's grace if you see it from one side, from one angle. If you see it is by God's grace that you do. Even they say that once Swami Yatiswaranji asked uh, his guru, Swami Brahmananji, that if you feel that I am fit enough, please, I would beg you to give me sannyas. So Raja Maharaj told him, nobody is fit, but still I would give you that. Because if you are fit, then you really don't need sannyas, then the God's grace is already there. But to make oneself fit for sannyasa, the initiation into sannyas is done, but one has to practice it to preserve that spirit of sannyasa. So that is, partly it is our self-effort, partly it is the grace. So we have to always think that someday or the other God's grace will be upon us. But at the same time, we should always keep our sails raised. That is, do our sadhana, do our little bit, whatever the Guru has asked us to do. And then the grace of the Ishta will flow. When it flows, we will all be able to take the advantage of that wind, that grace, the wind of that grace, the breeze of that grace. The breeze of the grace is always flowing. But if the sails are not raised, that much effort we have to do. So that is the idea. So, yeah. There's one more question. Just let me see. No. So I'll take your leave then, if there are no more questions. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.